I remember I went to go see her one day before I went to work. She sat me down, we had a talk, and she was really weak. She wasn't talking like 100%, but she was getting the words out. And she told me she loved me and told me that it was time and that she was tired and that it was time to let go. And I was like, no, Nana, like I can't live without you. Like I can't live without you.
Welcome to Lost and Found, the podcast where we talk about grief, loss, and everything that comes along with it. My name is Libby Blake, and on today's episode, we have actress Erica Pagee. Erica is one of my good friends, and we actually had already filmed this episode, but we were having lots of glitches, so we refilmed it, and we touch on so many important things. We talk about how different losses are different types of grief, what we learned from our loss and grief, and we also talk about how our grief changes over time. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for watching. Erica, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You were one of the first people I saw after my mom passed.
Yeah.
So I
didn't even know what to like
say or
I was
do.
just like, I'm gonna just give you a hug and like whatever you say, okay, and if not, okay, and bye, okay, bye.
Yeah, like I did not know what to say then. I was just so numb.
Yeah,
I don't
know
think
you definitely
I really
were.
said much.
You didn't.
When I saw you.
You were just like, it was like, okay, like, thank you. Like, it was definitely like that.
Yeah, I think I had just dealt with the funeral or her viewing. And
was it right after? I don't even remember. But it was probably close.
It was 8 days after she died was her viewing.
Oh, shit.
That time.
Yeah.
I think. But it was over the weekend, and I had to get the coroners to do an autopsy and stuff. They weren't going to.
And you had to, like, beg for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's so crazy.
I know.
That's like, why? Why?
Because
make it make sense.
Of her health and of her medical history and her age. They did not want to do one.
And what did they find?
She died of hypertension. She had been drinking. She did not kill herself. But she did die of hypertension, which is caused by being an alcoholic and lifestyle.
Yeah. Damn.
I know. You have also had your fair share of losses.
Yeah, a lot, actually. Every so many years, I feel like I go through it in my life. I'm like, oh my God, I can't take another one. But the first one for me was whenever I was 7 in the second grade. My little sister died. After that, I was 27. My grandfather died, who was like my dad. And then after that, I was almost 27 when my Nana died. Mm-hmm. And then when my grandfather died, it was 2009, 86, 96, 2000. What year? I was like, what, 23? Real. It was like 23, I think, 22-ish, something like that. The first time it happened, it was my little sister died. So I grew up with my grandparents, and they were like my parents. I went back and forth between my mom and my grandparents over the years, but when I was in kindergarten, or when I started kindergarten, I moved in with my grandparents because my mom moved around a lot at the time. She had a lot of kids and, all that. I would go visit on the weekends, and I was in my second grade classroom one day, and I'll never forget it. I was like the teacher's pet at the time. Her name was Mrs. Stone. I had her for 2 years straight, first and second grade. She was like, literally, you know how they say like some teachers can change your life? Mm-hmm. She was one of those for me, really? Like hands down. She had such an impact on my life. She was so sweet. She was so kind. She gave me this undivided attention. I don't know if she saw that I needed it, or maybe, I don't know I don't know what it was, but she was an angel. Like she would even take me to ice cream and all kind of things. But I was sitting in my classroom one day, and the principal came in to get her, and my little nosy self, because I like to know what's going on. She had pulled her to the side, and they were like talking, and I was like, what are they talking about? Like as I was at my desk doing my work, and next thing I know, the principal's coming to get me. And she grabs my hand and she's like, Erica, come here. And I was like, I looked at Mrs. Stone, my teacher, and I was like, am I in trouble? And the principal was like, no, baby, you're not in trouble. She walked me down the hallway, held my hand, and took me to the principal's office. And my Nana was sitting in there, and she had like mascara running down her face and everything. And they sat me down, and the principal, her name was Mrs. Wilson. She gave me this, like, it was a big doll. It was probably like this big. She gave it to me to hold, and they kind of gave me a minute. And then my grandma, my Nana, was like, your mom had an apartment fire today, and Brianna died, my little sister. And she was 2. And obviously in that moment, it was just like what? Like, wait, my mom's apartment caught on fire? Like, wait, my sister's dead? And like the whole story behind it, it's really crazy and tragic. But basically that morning, my mom had my little sister, Heather Yesenia. We call her both. Heather Yesenia is her name. She was 2 months old, and she was feeding her on the sofa in the living room. They lived in an apartment, I think on the first floor. But the way the apartment was, it was kind of higher up, like the bedrooms. Like it was not to where you can just like go to the window and like knock on it or anything. And she was feeding my sister, and she heard my little brother Nick crying, and he was 3 at the time, and he was crying in the room. And my Aunt Jennifer was in the room with her son at the time, who was Anthony, who was like, I think 8 or 9 months old. And my sister Brianna, who was 2, was in there with her. Like they shared a room because my aunt was staying with my mom at the time. She was helping her out, and she heard my brother crying, and she's like trying to feed the baby. Finally, she goes back there, and when she goes back, Nick is standing in front of the door, and there's just fire, like all behind him in the room. And she said, like, I've heard this story so many times, she literally had my sister in her arms, jerked him. As soon as she jerked him, the fire just like if she hadn't got him in that moment, he would have caught on fire. So of course she's freaking out. She has a baby in her arms, my little brother who's 3, right there. And she screams, Jennifer, for my aunt, get up, there's a fire. Jennifer was sleeping. It was like 8 in. And Jennifer had her son with her. And of course she just woke up and heard fire, not really know, what do you do in a situation like that? Like, you just get up and you run, you like grab whatever. She thought my mom already had Brianna. And they got outside. I want to say, if I remember correctly, it was like in the apartment building hallway, because it was one of those apartments where you have to go inside a door to get to the apartments.
Okay.
And they got out there and they're like, where's Brianna? I think my Aunt Jennifer, if I remember correctly, went back first and tried to get her, and the smoke was like so strong. So she got a towel, she covered her face, tried to get through. She couldn't. She got outside, and my mom like went into full just mom mode, what you do, and you like figure things out whatever the best way you can. She tried to go back in, she couldn't, but she ended up, and I still to this day I always question, I'm like, I have so much respect for my mom, and it like I'm gonna cry thinking about it, but she somehow climbed that brick wall of that apartment to get to the window and busted through. Her arm was bleeding, trying to climb in to get Brianna, and she couldn't. And she ended up passing away. She died from the smoke. We had to have a closed casket. It wasn't anything that could have been open, but that, I feel like that moment, now thinking of it in like retrospect, it kind of made me want to be closer to my family and my siblings more than ever before, because I had been with my grandparents for some time, and after that happened, I just wanted to be with my family and my siblings and my mom. So I ended up moving back about a year later. I think it was even less, maybe 8 or 9 months later. I moved back with my mom. I just had this like yearning to want to be with my family and my siblings. We went through life, and that happened, and then I kind of went back and forth through my grandparents over the years. My grandparents for me have always been like my second mom and dad, like literally. I actually never knew my biological father. They broke up before I was born. That's a whole other story. But for me, my grandpa was always my dad. He was the one and only father figure that I had in my life up until I was 27 when I met my biological father. And he got sick. And growing up with my grandparents, he was sick a lot of the time. Like when I was growing up, he had really bad asthma, emphysema. Later on, he got congestive heart failure. So he had a lot of health issues. But I remember like growing up as a kid, having to wake up at like 3 and 4 in the morning and go take him to the ER and being there with him and all of that. He died the 29th, 2009, 2 days after my 23rd birthday. And he had been sick for probably a good 5 years, like getting sicker and sicker. My Nana lost her job and was staying home taking care of him. And then I remember it gets to that point in their illness where it's like, they're like, okay, it's time. Like, you got to start calling people in. So all of my family, most of us were there whenever he actually passed, with my grandmother as well. I remember literally praying, and my grandmother actually did this whole surprise birthday for me at her house. And it was 2 days before he died. I just remember the whole time being like, please don't die on my birthday, or like make it through my birthday. They had called hospice, I think, like the week before. And then, the moment happened. So I watched him take his last breath, and then jumping to my grandmother. Hers is like a whole other story. Very different experiences. I was like a kid at one point, and then being older and more connected. Because like, although I loved my sister, I was connected with her, but it just, I wasn't with her on the daily, to where I could imagine my siblings, like my brother Eric at the time, who was with her every day. I bet I'm pretty positive it affected him in a different way than it affected me. But her dying made me want to be closer to them. And then going through the loss of my grandfather was just definitely the first real loss as an adult, where I could like really comprehend what was going on. And then also, apart from that, keeping in mind and consideration what my grandmother was about to go through, because they were together for 40 years, like that was her entire life. So that was a whole other aspect of it that came after that I never really expected. And I kind of took on this nurturing role for her and just wanted to take care of her and be there for her, that I never really had thought of or saw coming at that time. But yeah, watching a family member take their last breath is just like, you just don't forget it. Like I remember he like took a deep breath, and it was just, and it was like, we all like looked at each other, and it was like, oh my God. He was in hospice at the house. We had a hospital bed in the living room, all of that. It wasn't like he was at a hospital. They had nurses that were there and all of that. But being in the house when it happens, it's just like, I don't think I would ever want to do that ever again. Now, in retrospect, looking at it, like, I don't know. I think it's why we ended up leaving that house so comfortably after he passed.
Because he passed in it?
I think it was part of it. I mean, they were in a really bad financial situation because he had been sick for some time, but my grandmother ended up losing her job, and she had been like the primary, supporter. They had like Social Security and stuff, but it's not a lot of money. They definitely fell behind with everything. So it was a combination of just being really far behind, and she lived so far. And I actually ended up moving in with my grandmother after my grandfather passed to help her financially, because I had like an administrative job at the time. I literally drove like an hour and a half, 2 hours in traffic every day to like be there, and help her. But it was so far gone where it was like, okay, like let's move a little bit closer. I've got you. I kind of took on that like role with her. I just felt like it was my duty. For me, like I love my mom. She's my mom, but she was my second mom, and I felt like her daughter. And I would do the same thing for my mom today. Like, I'm going to look out for you and take care of you. And I felt that duty. And at that time, there was no one in my family that could like pick up and leave their family and go take care of her and like take on this whole responsibility. I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. I was like, okay, like I'm just going to do this. So with my grandmother's passing, it definitely gave me a new sense of responsibility in a way that I'd never like experienced before, I guess. That I think was really great for me and like my growth as a person and a woman that I'm proud of to this day. But it wasn't easy.
Right.
It was a lot.
How was it when your grandmother passed?
Oh, that was like, it was brutal. Nana had health issues, like off and on for a long time. But after my grandfather died, and there's a saying, when you're married with someone for a really long time, after one partner dies, they say there's like a 5-year or so lifespan of the one who's left because they die of a broken heart. And I 1,000% with my Nana think that happened. My Nana was like the life of the party. She tried to be happy. She was amazing, the best energy, the best vibes. Like, she would always have a good time. But after my grandfather died, he was her heart. They were together for so many years. I definitely think a piece of her died with him. And she was constantly fighting to find that little piece of happiness in that way that was missing. And I think she thought she might have found it and then realized she didn't. Yeah, when he died, like a part of her died that just like never came back. Her health started deteriorating. She got sicker. What was crazy, she ended up falling and she broke her ankle and she had to have surgery. After that surgery, it was just like this decline. I want to say it was like for about 1.5 years or so after, but it was just like worse and worse and worse. And it started it had been progressing, so I don't want to act like it was just like out of nowhere, but I remember it was January of 2014, the year that she died, where things just took a major turn. She got put in the hospital, I think for it was like a week or two, and it was a big scare. Like, we thought we might lose her, but she made it through. That was January. March, the end of March is when she actually passed. She had gotten put in the hospital again, and I think it was a combination of she was on a lot of medications. She had cirrhosis of the liver, but it wasn't from drinking. It was from, I think, hepatitis C. She had to get years ago. And I actually remember this the other day. I'm so glad I can remember it now. My Nana had an ulcer that burst when she was at work. I don't think I've ever told you this. And she almost died. They had to rush her to the hospital. Like, she almost hemorrhaged to death. They had to do emergency surgery. She told me about this whole experience that she had where she saw Jesus. She said she opened her eyes and she saw this big bright white light and she saw Jesus standing there, and he was like, "It's not your time. I'm going to give you another chance. You have more life to live." And she always talked about that so many times that I remember growing up. She lived for another, after that it was probably a good 30 years, 20 something at least. I remember her always saying, a bright light. He was at the foot of her bed at that hospital, in that hospital room. And she said she felt something she's never felt. It was so different. He was like, "Yeah, it's not your time. You got some more in you." I love that about her, because she definitely made the most of her time, because she was just like amazing. Oh, I'm gonna cry. No, she's my inspiration. She was just always so happy and full of joy. Like, she was a hard ass. Like, she will correct you really, really quick, but she was just always just good energy and vibes. I remember literally after my grandfather died, I ended up buying a house. She moved in with me. I would literally have friends go to my house to see Nana. They're like, "Hey, I'm here seeing Nana." And I'm like, I'm not even there. Like, "Yeah, I know, I came to see Nana." I'm like, oh, I love it.
I love that too.
And me too.
With Brianna, you were so young, did you realize what was happening or the depth of what happened?
You know, it's hard to say, and I've thought about this before. I understood, like, she was gone. She wasn't going to be there anymore. And I missed her, and it was sad to think of how everything happened, but I definitely think it was a very different experience going through death at such a young age versus like when my grandfather died, because it's just different. Like, you've lived and grown up with these people in your life that have such a strong, powerful impact, and all of a sudden they're gone. But I also feel like with me not living with my mother at that time, I think it could be different. My siblings at the time that lived with my brother or my mother that grew up with her might have had a different experience, because I literally moved in with my grandparents kindergarten. So when she was born, like, I already lived away, and I would just go and visit my mom on the weekends. So I didn't grow up with her in that aspect. Now thinking of a sibling dying, or even when I was younger, like, oh my goodness, like, so I think that for me might have been an advantage in like a messed up, crazy way, but it might have helped me. It's definitely different. Or it was for me, or it has been.
It's it's wild how different every grief is different.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's 1,000%. Like my Nana's grief from my grandfather's grief has been so different. When I was growing up, and even like as an adult, I always remember thinking of when my grandpa and my Nana would die, and they were both hard to even think of or comprehend, but hers was definitely different and harder, because she was my rock, and she's always been the rock of our entire family, and she was just my biggest cheerleader. She was always there for me in a way that was just so different than anybody else, and just supported me in everything that I did. She actually wasn't around when I really started getting into acting and actually like booking and working, but I did start doing some little things before she passed, and she would always be so excited and want to see the modeling pictures I did and know what time this show is coming on. She would call everybody and tell everybody. She was literally my biggest fan. On top of that, she was just always so just there. Like, that's really all I can say. She was just there to put me in my place, to let me know I'm doing great, to let me know I'm doing amazing, to let me know I'm messing up. Like, she was always that person. And she had such a strong impact on my life that I always knew losing her, because I knew it was likely I'm going to lose my grandparents before my mom or anybody. It was the biggest death that I always dreaded. So whenever it happened, it was like, oh my God, this is happening. Like, wait, what? It was a lot. I think I mentioned, she got put in the hospital. I think it was about 2 weeks before she died. She had been declining, but this was a time where it really started to decline, and they were like, okay, things are not looking good. Like, this is probably going to end soon. And I remember I went to go see her one day before I went to work. She sat me down, we had a talk, and she was really weak. She wasn't talking like 100%, but she was getting the words out. And she told me she loved me and told me that it was time, and that she was tired, and that it was time to let go. And I was like, no, Nana, like I can't live without you. Like, I can't live without you. She was like, yes, you can, Doobie. My nickname was Doobie. That's like a nickname my grandparents gave me. And she's like, yes, you can. And I was like, no, I can't. She's like, yes, you can. The crazy thing is, I left that day. I went to work, and she didn't talk after that day. Like, that was the last day that she actually spoke. Yeah. And I was like, oh, thank you, God. Like, I needed that conversation, because she was just letting me know, like, hey, like, I'm tired. She told me, I'm tired. I'm done. It's time. And no matter how hard it was to accept, that's always brought me so much peace, knowing that I got to have that conversation with her, you know? Because if I hadn't, then I don't know.
I feel like a conversation like that in the hard, like if you remember it during the hard times, it's like motivation to get out of the hard time, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, it brought me peace, and just like, she let me know, like, you're going to be okay. Like, you can do this. I'll always be with you. You got this. but I'm leaving. It's time. And even though that sucks, I'm like, it hurts. It's just like her letting me know that it wasn't a situation where she wasn't ready to go and it just happened. She's like, no, like she literally told me I'm tired. So I was like, okay. I mean, it wasn't that easy to say in the moment at the time, but it definitely over the years has brought me a lot of peace, for 1,000% for sure.
Whenever I get deep in my grief, I try to think about this one phone call me and my mom had after King died. I was really bad after King died.
I bet.
Could not get up, held her ashes for days. My mom, after a little while, she pretty much was like, when I die, I don't want this.
Yeah, I don't want you to do that.
And so she's like, I want you to be happy and I want you to live. So I do try to think of that conversation when I get in the thick of it, because it shows up so randomly.
Yeah. It's crazy how in the moment those moments bring so much pain and we don't want to hear it or like think about it. But later on, it's like, thank you. Like, and I needed this to like go forward and keep going forward.
And when my mom said it, I did not realize she was going to die 2 months later.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Because hers was so out of nowhere. Yeah, I feel like that's like a whole other thing where it's when it happens suddenly versus being able to somewhat prepare yourself for it. Because like with my grandfather, we knew it was over a span of some years where we're like, we know the time is coming. With my grandmother, it was, we knew, but it was in like a couple of months.
That's how my grandmother
But when it happens like out of nowhere, it's just,
it's so different.
It's a whole different experience, I feel like.
It is. Because my grandmother, we knew for probably 2 months, maybe a little over 2 months, and I was incredibly anxious.
Like you felt it.
When she was alive. I was going to see her every chance I could. I was driving, I wasn't sleeping. I was sleeping on the little side hospice bed and staying with her as much as I could, but I was so anxious because she was in so much pain and I could see her getting worse.
Yeah.
And then whenever she died, I knew before they called me.
Like you felt it when
I felt like a
happened?
release. Yeah. I was working. I felt something lift, and I told them I had to leave. My grandmother died. And I got in the car, and that's
And you didn't like actually know yet?
No one called me. They called me when I got in the car.
Oh, wow.
Then, like,
what did you feel? Like, how does that even...
It was easier. I had been tense for, like, the past...
Like, waiting for the anticipation.
And I knew she was sick. I knew she was suffering. It was like she wasn't suffering anymore.
Yeah.
And I felt that. I knew she wasn't. So it helped me accept it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Later down the line, it hit. It still comes in waves with my grandmother.
Yeah.
Even though I knew she was going to die.
Yeah.
It's not a constant. I think of her constantly, but I'm not always sad about my grandmother.
How many years has it been? Like,
I was 28, so 8 years.
With Nana, it's been like 11. And I still get waves, like random, out of nowhere, for sure, where it's just like, oh my God, what's happening? Yeah.
And I think of her all the time. But with my mom, I think about her all the time as well, but it just is like, it's painful. Even like when I think of the good memories, they're very painful.
Yeah.
So it's just completely different.
Yeah. But your mom, it's been, what, 1.5 years, right? Mm-hmm. I will say, for me, at least, and I think I mentioned this to you before, up until probably literally a few years ago, and then we're like 11 years in now, I would literally go to call her. Because we used to always talk on the phone while I was driving, like to work or wherever I was going. And I would just randomly, not all the time, just here and there, I would go to get my phone and be like, let me call Nana. And they'll be like, oh, I can't do that. I think it's been maybe like 3 or 4 years that I actually haven't done that anymore. But that was like, what, 6, 7 years in of the whole journey.
Earlier this year, I had booked something, and it was a really good day. And I was there like 5 hours. It was like really fun. I was on the way home, and it was like an hour drive, and I wanted to call her so bad. And that was the first time I wanted to call her to just tell her about like how good my day was.
Your day, yeah.
And the second I realized I couldn't, I got so mad. Like, I was very upset, and then I got really mad at her that day. I got mad at her for dying. So that was wild.
What do you think that, like, comes from? What do you think it, like...
It goes back and forth because sometimes, like, I try to take blame for her death because of my childhood, or sometimes I'm fully aware that alcoholism is an addiction and it's incredibly hard. But then sometimes my brain is like, she could have tried harder. She could have tried harder, and she didn't, and now it killed her. So it's just very frustrating to know that.
Do you think that has anything to do with because she had an addiction? And, like, you blame her for that?
I used to. When I was younger, I did used to blame her for her addiction. I didn't understand addiction, and I thought she could just stop if she wanted to.
Yeah.
And that's not true.
It's not how it works.
Then she was aware of what it was doing to her. I remember her calling me once and saying, because she would check herself into the hospital when she was not feeling well. And when I say not feeling well, I mean when life was getting too hard. A few times it was because she had suicidal thoughts, and then a few times was she was overwhelmed with life. They told her that she needed to stop drinking, she needed to stop smoking, that she at any time could have a stroke.
And this is like years ago, so she was way younger. This is more, okay,
this
more recently.
Was within like the last year of her life. She knew that. She knew that. Wow. And she kept doing it anyway. So I get mad about that.
So does it not make you in some way, I get like being mad, but does it not also make you
more aware of like, the addiction?
But like, does it make you happy that she was aware enough to be like, I'm not okay. Let me go somewhere where I know they're going to look out for me, so I'm not going to go do something I'm going to regret or crazy. Like, do you think it could have been like a defense mechanism, but maybe a healthy one, if she knew what she could do could be more destructive or worse? You know what I mean?
Yes, but that I don't think stopped her from drinking. Her drinking and smoking was still happening with the news. You think you're immortal until you're not.
Yeah.
And more people do it than they don't,
Yeah.
They won't go to the hospital if they feel a little tingle or a pain, and then it's
I hate going to the hospital, like the doctor. I don't go.
And it sometimes is a big deal.
Yeah.
I feel like it was the same thing with her. She had the information, but you're not aware of your mortality until it's gone.
I never knew that.
Oh, that part about it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like with her though, I could see it being like a protection thing to protect herself and you and the people she loved, even though it didn't stop her from drinking. But I'm saying, like, she could have easily stayed and just binged or whatever, but she's like, let me do this to like try to prevent or help.
Oh,
at least
for sure. Yeah.
Part of it. You know what I mean? Like, in that way.
Yeah. I'm not fighting I'm not fighting at all, but I'm not discrediting her going to the hospital for whatever reason. I just know she was given the information.
Yeah.
That it could kill her. And it was serious.
So she knew.
She knew.
How long before she passed did she know? Do you know?
It was probably a year she knew. And
did she tell you?
She told me that the doctors told her that she needed to stop drinking and smoking, that she could have a stroke, that she could die, and they put her on medication and stuff. But then again, I don't think I was aware of how severe it was.
Yeah. Were y'all close at that time? Like, y'all
I mean, we were trying. We still had the ups and downs.
Yeah.
But when she found that out, she was still supposed to move here. And
then she didn't. Mm-mm. Do you think that part of you has, like, resentment towards her for that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I've talked about it with Daniel some too. And he was like, because I've mentioned before that if she would have moved here, or if I just would have, like, sucked it up and moved her here, even if she had to have lived here for a little while, it would have been better than her being dead. And he has said that you don't know that.
Yeah.
She could have died here.
Yeah.
And
there's just no way to know, like, any of it.
Yeah, I had never thought about she could have died here. And, like, I could have found her. And he's like, and that would have been a whole nother...
That would have been, like...
process for you.
Oh, my God. And then being here in this house...
And then if she would have died here... There's always the ifs. And if she would have died here, I would have blamed myself for letting it happen right in front of me, you know?
Probably be worse, honestly.
Agreed. It changes daily. Sometimes I think I had a hand in it, and sometimes I don't. Like, I'm fully aware that my mom was sick. She had mental disorders. I'm also, like, very hyper aware that some of them show up in me. And I'm like... I don't want to be that way.
Yeah.
And then I feel bad for thinking I don't want to be that way because it feels like I'm talking poorly about my mom.
Yeah. I get it. I get that totally.
But she wasn't her brain. Like,
what do you mean?
You're not your brain. I'm not my brain. It's an organ in our body. I fully believe we can change the way we think.
I agree. No, I agree.
We can
1,000%.
reprogram our minds, and which means we are not our mind.
I think we're our heart and our soul.
We're our soul.
Yeah.
So, like, which is so much stronger than our mind.
Than what that says about you. I 1,000% agree with.
So, I feel like genetically my brain is similar to hers, but I feel like I have, a bigger support system. I'm not scared of therapy like a lot of that, like my mom's generation is.
Yeah.
More aware.
Never go to therapy, like, ever. Yeah.
They think it's a horror.
Is that like a millennial thing? Because I feel like we're all, like, about therapy.
Well, we are, and it's weird because when I lived with my dad, he made me go to therapy as a bad thing. So it was originally wired in me
that therapy is bad.
That therapy is bad. And I was just so proud of myself when, as an adult, I started going. I could be totally different now with the whole way I was raised. Because it was like a punishment. I was the child, the black sheep. There was something wrong with me. He made it known something was wrong with me.
That's so fucked up.
Mm-hmm. And he always blamed my mom for it.
I hate that. How long were they together? Like, before they split or whatever?
I was young, maybe like 6. And they got married because my mom got pregnant.
Mm-hmm. So he just, like, basically always made her feel, like, bad.
I don't know if he always did.
Maybe not always, but ended up making her feel bad about just, like, certain ways that she was? Or
I don't know. I don't know why
Yeah.
they got divorced. I really don't. But I do know he talked so much shit about her after.
But I think that says a lot about him and how the relationship, he probably made her feel like shit. And if she already had any underlying issues, addictions, whatever there, it probably just brought it out and contributed to it more. You know what I mean? Which sucks.
He called me a week after she died. Or sorry, he did not call me. He texted me.
Wait, he didn't even call you? He just texted? Mm-hmm. He never called you?
Me. I might still have it. He did not call me. He texted me, and the conversation led to him talking shit about my mother a week after she died to the daughter of the one who just lost a mom.
That sucks.
I was like, that's shitty.
Yeah, that's shitty.
And then he said I was just like her. Hadn't changed. She ruined me.
Damn. And you know what sucks is, like, even if your mom had her flaws and her things that were wrong in what she did that he didn't agree with, the fact that he is so openly willing to point that out to your child, like, I just believe in a relationship, and especially when you have kids involved, you should never bash the other parent.
No.
Like, period. Like, you need to praise them and stick up for them the best you can, the most you can. Obviously, sometimes you get to a different point in time, but in a situation like that, it's like, come on. So I think that shows more about his character than anything, you know? Mm-hmm. Like,
I agree. Sucks. Yes, he does.
Yeah. We already knew that.
We did know that. Okay, so you have a good amount of peace about your Nana.
I do now. Yeah. Knowing that she was suffering first, because she suffered especially the last few years. Really, after my grandfather died, she suffered a lot. Even though she tried to live her life and be happy, she suffered a lot. But especially, like, when she got really sick and was in the hospital, she was miserable. You know, she had no energy. And towards the end, she couldn't hardly talk. If I never had that conversation and went to see her that day before I went to work, that one Monday afternoon, I don't know if I would feel the same. But that conversation brought me so much peace. I've always been so grateful for going to the hospital that day and having that conversation with her, because it's brought me a lot of peace over the years. Like, knowing that she personally told me, Doobie, I'm tired, I'm ready, I'm done. Yes, you can live without me. All of that. It's brought me peace. I think one thing that I still think of now that's just so crazy, I've watched both of my grandparents die and take their last breath. I know the day that my Nana actually died, I had gone into work, I bartended, and I was bartending. It was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I got the phone call, and they were like, you need to get here. And I, like, closed all my checks out, my tabs, whatever, and went there. And her room was full, like, full of so many family members and friends. And I still go back and forth on this sometimes today, because she always said, I don't want y'all doing that. Like, let me go in peace. Like, don't keep me on any ventilators, no machines. I don't want everybody standing over me, watching me. And that we did too. But it's like, when you're in that moment, like, how do you want to be there? You just want to be there, and you want to be there till the end, like, whenever it happens. And we didn't, like, pull a plug or anything. It was just, we knew it was happening. They let us know. But that is one thing that I don't want to say I don't have peace with, but, like, it makes me be like, are you not okay with it, Nana? Are you like, why'd y'all do that? I feel like she's forgiving and it's fine. But it is one of those things that I've questioned over the years, because she did specifically say she didn't want that, and we all were there. You know, like, I watched her take her last breath. I saw the machine go from beep, beep, beep to beep. And then, like, the line goes straight. And then everybody just, like, oh, that's a heavy feeling. Be glad, like, you weren't there for that. It sucks. Because you didn't, with your mom, right? No. Yeah, it's an experience I don't even know how to explain. It sucks. But part of you is happy to be there for that last moment. But it's like a thing I still go back and forth with. I'm sure a lot of people who've been there for that last moment like feel the same thing. It's weird. It's different.
Like big life things change. Do you ever have a feeling of wanting your Nana there?
Oh, yeah. No, 1,000%. Like, the one thing that Nana always would never stop about was me getting married and having a baby. So she wasn't there for either of those experiences. So I think about it all the time now, especially when I look at Rio. I'll just have random days where I'm like, oh my God, like, all she ever wanted was to see you. Literally, that was like her biggest dream. So in that aspect, like it sucks and it's hard, but I know she's here. I know she's watching. I always try to look for little signs, and she'll give little ones here and there. I feel like some people communicate, like their loved ones communicate with them more. I don't get a lot of communication, but it's always special when it happens. But I know she's here. But yeah, it definitely makes it just like shit. Like, you were supposed to be here, you know? I know we talked about this. You said it makes you question certain things you want going forward. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah.
Because she's not going to be here?
I go back and forth. There's days that I'm very hyper aware I'm going to die and I want to live my life to the fullest. And then there's days where I still kind of feel like I let her down sometimes. So I don't always feel like I deserve it. So I have a hard time still trying to experience happiness in general.
Okay. Because she's not going to be there or not there.
Yeah.
Do you feel guilty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go through like spurts where I feel very guilty about it. Then I go through times where I'm like, you were doing the best you can or the best you could, and you were just trying to protect yourself. And I didn't make her drink.
Yeah, no.
But I feel like a grieving mind that doesn't have answers wants answers, you know? So
Yeah.
I feel like it's constantly looking for them and trying to find them. The easiest place to find them is with the things I did or did not do.
So do you feel like you kind of blame yourself or try to find a reason to blame yourself for certain things, I guess?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I went through... see, I don't ever feel guilty about big life, great moments. I feel bad and like sad she's not there. But I did go through a phase of guilt after my Nana died. Whenever my grandfather died, she was left in a horrible financial situation. And I moved to Winder to help her because she lived in Winder at the time. I think I mentioned this earlier. Lost her house. I bought a house closer in Lawrenceville. But when we moved and I bought this house, I ended up meeting my now husband at the time. And I was never there. So she was always there by herself. And then, you know, she ended up getting on dating apps later on and started dating people. But I'm like, I have had a lot of moments over the years. And I definitely went through a phase of guilt where I was like, maybe I should have just been there more. Maybe I shouldn't have spent all my time with him, which I did. In my defense, we would like take her to dinner once a week. I would like spend time with her, but you know, just not being there.
Yeah.
On the daily, like she assumed it, and we both thought it was. I thought I was buying this house. We're going to live here together every day, and then I happened to meet him, and was spending all my time with him, and she was there. So I definitely went through a phase of guilt for a while. I'm just feeling bad for not, I guess, being there the most
doing more
the most that I could have. I feel like just when we just go through all the emotions. Like we go through all, like
We do. And
all of it. We find any reason to feel all of it.
And the other guilt I had mentioned to you before was I'm working through this, but I do feel guilty for being happy. The second I'm happy, I'm immediately like, stop doing that, because it feels like I'm forgetting her or
moving on.
And I feel guilty for that. And then it feels like I also feel guilty because she is not here.
Experience it with you.
Yeah. Or just have happy moments in general because she's dead. What's your biggest lesson?
Our biggest lesson, I would say, is love the people you love always, and just be there the most you can. Because even now, I wish I would have given Nana a little bit more love in the end that I didn't, and I have to live with that forever. But I know she knows that I loved her. But I know for her, if I would have just done a little bit more extra here and there, it would have filled her heart in a different way. That I wish I had that peace with me now to know, like, at least she felt that and didn't feel like any bit of lack. Because I do think, I was young. I was like, 22? Young, working, my boyfriend, you know how we are. And I think I didn't value the things that I value as much now, to where now I feel like it's an obligation to show that appreciation and that love. Just letting your people know, like, I love you, I value you, I'm here, and I don't ever want you to feel like I don't. And I'm sorry if I don't, but I feel like I have a more of an awareness of that now than I did then, to where I would have done it a little bit differently.
I feel like you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
And it really does take something
Switching it, like,
that big to happen.
To make you realize.
To make you realize. Problem is if you don't learn.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As long as you try to remember that, because you could die right now.
Yeah. Any of us. That's like the crazy part that makes it, like, I don't want to say more complicated sometimes. It should be more simple now that I'm speaking it out loud. It's just love the people you love.
Mm-hmm. And it is.
And be there.
It is that simple.
It's that simple.
But we
like overcomplicate it so much, and we get busy and tied up in like our own shit.
With things that aren't even
that
real.
Don't even matter. And it's like, just like, if somebody calls, I got to work on this.
No, answer the phone.
Answer the phone and just reply.
When my mom died, there'd be days I would not pick up my phone, but there'd also be days where I wanted to talk to someone, but then people would reach out and I'm like, no, I don't want to text anyone. I don't want to call anyone.
Like, I can't.
I
just can't. Yeah.
Like, I wanted it, but I was not.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I get it. I totally understand and relate. But then, and a lot of times it's not that big of a deal, and it's like they're just calling to shoot the shit or whatever. But like, what if it's that one time?
And it feels
where they like really,
And even just like talking to your friends sometimes right after my mom died was so taxing.
Yeah.
And such a chore, because I had to
explain and like, yeah.
And it was the like main topic of the conversation, and if they wanted to know how to show up for me and stuff,
you don't know what to say.
And you shouldn't have to, but also I fully understand they don't know how to show up for you. But it's taxing for the one grieving to be like, this is what I need, because you don't really know what you need.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
This is like a whole little moment for me of just like,
You don't know what you need.
No, just not even with just grieving, just like going through hard times in general, when you don't want to talk to anybody. Because like for me, when I'm going through it, I'm not going to be good company. Like I need some space. So it's like, how do you find that middle ground of like, I know you love me and you're just trying to look out, but like, I'm going through this and I don't know how to show up and respond to everything I know you're about to ask me right now. So, it's like,
But even sending a text is exhausting. When my mom first died, sending a text was
Not
exhausting.
happening.
It was not what I
No, I
wanted
get
to
it.
do.
Yeah, 1,000% I get it. Much less taking a whole phone call.
Yes. Right.
Like what? No.
But in hindsight, or not really hindsight, but where I am now, yes, I want to learn from that as well and show up for my friends and like my chosen family, because all my family's dead. And I want to show up more and be more loving and be more honest, but also accept people as they are. I feel like that's the biggest lesson I have, and not like try to change them. As I was an adult later, I didn't judge my mom, but I still didn't accept her struggles.
Yeah.
Because that's hard to accept. It hurts
No,
the
I know all
child
about
as well.
it. Like addiction is in my family, so it's like it's hard. Addiction is hard.
And I don't want to change anyone. I just want to support them on their journey the best way I
know
can.
how and can, yeah. It's all we can do. And I think it all just at the end of the day comes down to just always trying to be understanding and compassionate and non-judgmental.
And patient.
And patient, and very patient. Patience is like probably the top of the list.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, and this is a big thing that I've learned, more recently too, is we can tend to take things so personally, and it has nothing.
It's not about you
At all. And it's just being more understanding and compassionate to what people are going through. And just because they're not telling you doesn't mean they're not going through something.
Being alive is hard.
Yeah. And I if we all just do more of that, we'll have a better place.
Mm-hmm. And do what makes you happy.
Yeah. And be there for the ones you love the best you can when you can, and hope they do the same for you, and give understanding and compassion and mercy and grace when you feel like they might need it, or when maybe you don't think they need it, but you know it's what you should do, or maybe they don't deserve it. But I always just try to think of how would I want to be treated? Let me just try to do more of that always.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I really try to do. Besides responding to text messages and calls sometimes, but I'm working on it.
You are.
I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress.
But
I'm admitting, I own it.
Yes, and I love it.
But yeah, I love you.
Erica, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. So grateful to watch you grow into everything you have. I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
And
we met at that little acting workshop. What was it, George
at
Pierre?
Get Seen. I don't remember who it was, but yeah, we met there. We have grown so much.
Oh my God. It's crazy.
I know. And we're going to continue to.
Yes. Great things are coming.
Yes.
For both. I feel it.
I love you.
I love you more.
Thank you so much for watching Lost and Found. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe below. And next episode will be out on Friday. And please remember, grief is fucking hard. It is really fucking hard. You do not have to do it alone. And I truly believe it's the hardest thing you will have to do in this lifetime. So please just know there are people out there that understand you. I love you and thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.